Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me here on Wave Now. I'm Myra Ansari. It's 11:35. We are going live to U of L Health, where they're holding a press conference this morning about how to kind of mentally process what came out of the elections. For some people, they may be happy. For some people, they may be sad. So what's the best way of moving forward, according to some folks at U of L Health? So we're going to be talking to U of L Health Peace Hospital therapist David Hoovenagel. I hope I'm saying that right. So he's going to be answering some questions. So let's listen in. They're getting started.
If you're having any trouble recording, we can go ahead and send this out right after. So first, we're talking a little bit about how to cope with elections, right? I think that as David and I were talking, it brings a lot of emotions. And so we're just going to dive into a little bit of information and advice of how to kind of cope with stuff like that. So David, if you wouldn't mind for me, just first introduce yourself by saying and spelling your first and last name, and then your position with Peace Hospital.
Okay, my name is David Hoovenagel. I put a caption on the picture of my last name, and I'm going to put in the chat a pronouncer. As I like to joke, I did go to school for broadcast journalism, but God in his good nature chose to kick me out and do this instead. So in the text box is a pronouncer for my name. I will say I've enjoyed watching you all struggle over my last name. And so any of those thoughts probably should just use my Chiron and not try to pronounce my name. But it's Hoovenagel. Think Santa Claus on a bucking bronco.
Perfect. All right, David. Well, let's kind of dive right in here. Can we just kind of talk a little bit about, the stresses and the anxieties that may exist during elections, especially the day after, and particularly if the outcome isn't necessarily what you voted for?
Well, politics by history are a very emotional matter. They're an emotional animal. Historically, rhetoric is an emotional form of speech trying to get people motivated to do something. And political rhetoric is one of our current forms of speech right now that is very emotional, and people do get stirred about it or stirred because of it. And so we as emotional creatures react to it, either negatively or positively. Political rhetoric is a lot like going to a sporting event where people will act in, shall I say, less than controlled ways. That they might raise their voices, they might yell, they might get excited, or even disgusted based on whatever the candidate or political speaker is saying. So it is a very emotional type of communication. And I do believe that this is what I believe. I can't say I can read their minds, but I think politicians do play for that. Politicians want to stir the crowd. They want to fire up the party. They want to stir up the supporters to try to motivate them to get to the polls, to vote for them, to try to send their message, to try to get others to vote for them. So it's a very emotional experience.
People get invested.
People do get invested. They need people to get invested to take part in campaigns, to take part in government. So it is something that politicians do try to do. And I was going to basically talk about drama. There's this concept that I didn't share with Ms. Ansari, but this is something I'm going to share real quick. This is a dynamic that is part of the political campaign that does tend to stir people up a lot. It's called drama. Politicians play this quite a bit, and it is a way that they kind of continue to stir people up. There's this triangle where politicians call their opponent a persecutor, and they make the general population out to be a victim. And they will say my opponent is terrible. My opponent is going to be a disaster. My opponent is bad for you. My opponent is wrong for you, and I am the solution. And this is the way a lot of political campaigns go. One of our local campaigns used the word extreme quite a bit, in a very emotional fashion. Whether or not it worked, it's hard to say. That would have to be from a political science professor as to whether that worked. But it was a very emotional phrase that he used. And then
And David, we don't want to go into the political analysis too much.
But the emotion stuff, because what it actually did was it created some kind of emotional effect like this, where these politicians kept flooding the airwaves with all kinds of emotion, and the general public became emotionally stirred, and it just didn't stop. And by the time it finished, most people are going, will this end? Is this going to ever stop? I have to go to the poll, and I'm going to have to plug my nose, and I'm going to have to vote for something. And so that was an experience that many people, I'm sorry you're seeing this, I'm trying to stop sharing this. That was an experience that many people have had election year after election year in the United States. But I think that's just important to understand that emotional effect of the political campaign on us, and that by the time election days came around, a lot of people are probably emotionally burned out. And the day after election day, people are continuing to be burned out, and maybe they are feeling some kind of depression because their candidate was defeated. Or again, they might feel some kind of continued sense of elation that their candidate won. But most of the time, people in the United States, at least in my estimation and from what I've read, are emotionally burned out by election day. They just want something to end because this whole emotional process of the election has just drained them and their adrenaline.
So what's your advice on ways to cope with that, with some of those, that burnout and those just emotional stresses and the anxieties after an election?
Well, I do think for some people, if your candidate lost, you may legitimately have to grieve. It is a loss. As humans, we do get emotional, and as humans, we have a great deal of emotional buy-in to things. And when they end, we kind of lose a piece of us for a while, and we are going to grieve. We're going to have some anger. We're going to have some depression. We might even have some bargaining. Please tell me that I'm just in a dream and I'm going to wake up and my side did win. But then we might have this realization that, okay, it happened, it's over, and I just have to accept, my candidate didn't win. So we might have that emotional process that we all have to go through. And hopefully it's not going to be a very long process, because your candidate losing is not the same as you losing a loved one. It's not the same as your dog dying. It's not the same as a breakup relationship. It is a loss, but it's not the most significant loss that you're going to have as an average human being. So hopefully it's going to be a fairly short grieving process. Now, the other kind of coping skill that some people might have to have is trying to bring yourself back to reality. As I kind of played that little triangle of drama, we get saturated with politics. We get saturated with the message of the politicians that something terrible is going to happen if I lose. Something terrible is going to happen if my opponent wins. And so our sense of reality can get distorted. And so we might have to practice some self-talk. That includes, the world did not end because my candidate did not win. Life is going to go on. The business of life is still calling me to take care of it. And I do think also our day-to-day lives are not going to change. We still have to get up. We still have to get dressed. We still have to take care of kids and family and go to work. Those things still have to happen. So I have to focus on what's in front of me. And then let's just say your candidate did lose and you got a pretty political office place or workplace where people like to talk smack or talk trash as if this was like the Bears or Green Packers thing. I think the reality is good people will be respectful of your difference of opinion. Good people are going to be respectful that you don't agree with them on everything. Good people are going to show good manners, even though they're one party, you're the other. Good people know they got to get along with you and they have to work with you, and they're not going to try to rub it in. And I'd like to say reflexively, if you are someone that likes to rub it in, you're going to hurt your work relationships if you want to keep talking about, my candidate kicked your, candidates, what, avoid trying to rub it in. You got to get along with people in this world. And I think if you want to gloat, and I hate to say this, if you got to gloat on social media to your friends who agree with you if you have to gloat. Otherwise, be respectful of differences of opinion in your workplace. And I think you're going to have fewer problems, because I do think gloating is going to come back and bite you like a snake, because you might get the boss calling you in and going, hey, can you tone it down a bit? So that would be my thoughts about, not gloating.
David, I kind of want to open it up to any other questions that folks may have. If you guys have a question, you can unmute yourself and ask, or you can type it in the chat. Okay, perfect. It seems like no questions, but David, is there anything else that you want to say just about, coping the day after, being respectful and, realizing that, we can still get along even though political views have become very divided over recent years?
I will say two other thoughts about coping. What you and I think about really dictates how we feel. Our feelings come from our thoughts. And if we can manage our thoughts, we can manage our feelings. And so managing your thoughts might mean reducing how much political TV you're watching, how much political radio you're listening to, how many conversations about politics you're listening to, what you're thinking about can really affect your feelings. And so if you can get your mind on...
I'm going to pause you real quick, just because there seems to be some ringing going on.
This is a nurse manager. Lauren, I have to call you back, okay? Because I'm with the media.
No, he was
Right. I just like saying that. It made me feel really super important. Sorry, folks. Okay. But the thing is, trying to watch what you're thinking, what you're focusing on, what you're concentrating on, all of those will affect your emotions. And so you might want to cut down your news channel consumption. Looking at news websites, that might need to be reduced. Getting yourself in front of a Hallmark movie or something that is totally different than focusing on the world. That would be my thought about doing it. Also, get yourself outside. Get yourself out in nature, walk your dog, go do something that's going to give you meaning and purpose. That also could be really helpful.
Perfect. Well, David, I appreciate your advice, and I appreciate you taking the time for us today.
Welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to send this all out to you as soon as we get off the Zoom, and I appreciate you all for joining us. Thank you so much. I'm going to go get outside now.
Okay, bye.
All right, thank you so much for joining me here on Wave Now for this stream with U of L Health Peace Hospital, just giving some advice on how to mentally process and move forward with the election results. If it was in your favor, was not in your favor. I think that this therapist that was speaking with us gave some really good points to, this is not something like a breakup or a death in the family. This is something that we can all deal with and move forward with and find ways to kind of channel some positive energy forward. But I appreciate all of you joining me here on Wave Now, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.